All right, let's weigh up how much silver we got from this first harvest of the silver cell now that it's good and dry. Absolutely perfectly dry and very shiny. Nice. All right, I think it's about time to do a clean out on my silver cell. We've got a lot of silver down there that we've run through the cell. I want to harvest that. The electrolyte's getting kind of dark. The last electrode I put in there, or anode I put in there, I know you can't see it, it's all misty in there, it's just down to a nub. So I guess it's time to clean this thing out. We'll get the anode slimes out of the anode bottle. We'll see if we need to replace the filter. Might just do it anyway. We'll harvest all the crystals from out of here and clean them up. And we'll get the electrolyte, we'll filter it, and we'll drop all of the silver out of the electrolyte so it can be reused in the future. Run through the cell in the future with clean electrolyte in it. So let me turn this off, and I'll take this over to the workbench and we'll start taking it apart and get it all cleaned out and ready to run again. All right, the first thing I want to do is pull the anode bar out. So I don't know if you saw my update on the silver cell where I talked about building this cardboard contraption to go on top to keep debris out of the cell. I have plans to make something nicer for the future, but maybe we could do that while the cell's down for maintenance here. So here's the anode bar. First thing I want to do is pull it out and get the slimes off of it. It's pretty ate up. This was about a little over 8 inches long when it was new. So yeah, we've really chewed it down, and 2-3 other anode bars have gone through the cell since I started it up. So I think it's definitely time for a clean out. What I'll do is I'll take all the old anode bars, they look like this, and I'll melt them down and make new long ones to restart the cell with. All right, let me just connect the cathode from the power supply, and we'll take this over to the workbench over there and we'll start dealing with it. All right, so I need to get the bottle, the anode bottle, out of this contraption. Which is really pretty simple. Move this out of the way, raise that up, pull that off, and then I've got the anode bottle here. Let me cover this back up to keep debris out of the silver down there. Move this out of the way for now. We'll deal with the anode bottle and the slimes to start with. So this cell design is based on Anthony Thomas's cell design, and well, my clean out is based on how he does it. Let's see if I can get as much of the slimes as possible out of the anode cell here. It's a fair amount in there. I mean, this was cement silver that I made these anode bars out of. It looked like really good silver, but apparently it was dirtier than it looked because we got a lot of slimes. A lot of stuff which is not silver, basically. And also some pieces of silver that have kind of spalled off of the anode bars. So I'm probably blocking the camera. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, as I wash some of the black stuff out of here, I can see that there's some silver in there too. Shouldn't be using tap water. All right. That was a mistake. I should not have been using tap water. I should have been using distilled water, which is what I'm using right now. I grabbed the wrong bottle and didn't bother reading the label. All right, so Do I want to change the filter? The filter looks pretty good. I mean, I have yards of this material, and it only takes a couple of minutes to change it out, but it does look pretty good. It's a little stained, but on the whole, it looks pretty good. I think maybe, well, I'm probably going to have the cell down for a while, so maybe I'll just go ahead and change the filter. All right, I'm going to let this stuff settle and just move it aside, out of the way. We'll deal with it in a little while. So we got about 2.5 liters of liquid in here, and I'm sure the silver is going to take up some of that volume, so it should be able to all fit in a 3-liter beaker. So let me put a strainer in there, and we'll pour off this used electrolyte. The strainer should catch silver. I'm not sure we're going to have too much of it coming over. Wow, that is some shiny silver crystal there, let me tell you. That's, whoa, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really stick to the anode plate, or the cathode plate on the bottom. Grows from it, but doesn't really stick to it because it's very shiny. I was thinking about roughing it up in a previous video, but I think I'm going to leave it alone. I really think I'm going to leave it alone. It makes it easy to get the silver off. Okay, definitely got the distilled water here. We're going to rinse these crystals a little bit. Get as much of this used electrolyte off of them as I can. Maybe a few errant crystals coming over. You know what? I'm going to give them a real rinse. Oh yeah, that's liberating a lot more blue liquid. All right. Ooh, that's some shiny stuff in there. It's got to be a lot purer silver than what I started with. There are some knife-like crystals in there that I think I could stab somebody with, too. Try to get a picture of one. Yeah, look at that. Look at that crystal. Holy cow. Yeah, I don't know how shiny they are, if that's coming through. Alright, let me see if I can get this silver out of here and into another beaker for further cleanup. Whoops. Oh yeah, we got a lot of silver here. Those anode bars were long and heavy. You want to run like 3 of them through here? See if I can. It's one of those knife-like crystals right there. And another one. Do some damage with those. Alright. I'm going to have to scrape the silver off of the cathode arm here and the sides of the cathode. It's coming off pretty easy. Good. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming off. Yeah, it's coming off pretty easy. Alright, good. I think that's going to get it. Alright, I got the cathode cleaned up. I got all of the crystals out of this big 5-liter beaker into this smaller beaker here. And I'm going to give them a good cleaning. And then I'm going to dry them out and we'll weigh them. Alright. I'm going to give you a close-up look at these big knife-like crystals I pulled out of there before I throw them in here. I'll give you a close-up look at that with the phone. Those are huge. Those are huge. There's the end of my finger for scale. Yeah, those could do some damage. And there's more of them in here. I mean, there's one over there. Of course, it wants to focus on my finger, not the silver. There's one over there. And there's more of them in here I saw as I was emptying the cell out. I'm going to put these in with the rest of it and give this some good cleanup washes. Alright, I have rinsed this stuff very, very well till all of the blue-green color was out of it, and then a couple more rinses just to be sure. I'm going to put it in this dish and put it on low heat to dry it out. Then we can weigh it and see just how much silver here. And see just how much silver is here. Man, that is some pretty looking stuff. It's so shiny. Look at it at the right angle. Seriously shiny. Alright. What little bit of silver I can't get out of here. Alright, let me wash the rest of the silver out of here. Into here. There we go. Yeah, alright. I will use a pipette to take. Here's another one of those really long crystals. Look at that. They're all over in here. I'll use a pipette to take some of this moisture out before I put it on the heat to start drying the silver out. Alright, so I'm going to pipette out the excess water on the silver, and I'm going to put it in this big beaker over here that has my used electrolyte and my rinse water in it. And we're going to recover all the silver from this. There's going to be a lot of silver in it. I used, what was it? 339 grams of silver went into making this electrolyte. That's like over 10 ounces, troy ounces of silver. So there's a lot of silver in this used electrolyte. We're going to recover that. Plus any silver I'm pipetting up here will wind up in the bottom of this beaker and we'll get it back too. So no losses. Alright, there's our silver harvest. I'm going to put it on low heat and just let it slowly dry out in the fume hood with the airflow going. And we'll weigh it up and see how much we got with our first harvest. Alright, it's time to deal with this stuff. The slimes have had a chance to settle out to the bottom. And we've got some clear liquid on top. I want to filter off that clear liquid. I'll add it to this stuff and we'll drop all the silver out of it. We'll capture the slimes on the filters and I'll put them with my slime storage. Yeah, anode slimes. Even good looking silver can have that much nastiness in it. Alright, we'll just let that filter through. I'll rinse the silver out of the filter. We'll put that in there. Yep, there's the slimes caught on the filter. See, Johnny, this is why I wanted to refine the silver before I gave it to you. When you were in town, you clinked the bars I'd already made together and said they sounded good to you, but, well, this is what I just got out of them. The next time I make bars for you, they'll be a lot nicer and purer. Okay, the filter with silver cell slimes is in this container, cleverly labeled silver cell slimes. Now, in theory, I should be able to extract precious metals from this stuff. In practice, though, I'm probably going to have to run the silver cell for years before I have enough silver slimes to extract a measurable amount of precious metal. So we'll just have to let it build up. I'll probably need to let it build up until I need a much bigger container to hold the filters. And back here, we've got all the used electrolyte, all the rinsed water, all of the liquid that came out of the anode bottle, and stuff that was rinsed off the anode slimes. So it's all in there. So there's going to be a lot of silver in there. So we got to recover that silver so we can reuse it. So I'll get set up to do that and show you how I'm going to do it. All right, so it's time to recover all of the silver in the used electrolyte and the anode bottle and the rinsed water. It's going to be a lot of silver in there, so I want to get that back. How am I going to do it? Well, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put some copper in there, and we're going to cement it out on the copper. I've got my GoPro going down here. We'll see if we can get a time lapse of it. There is no excess nitric in this stuff, so I expect a pretty immediate reaction as soon as the copper hits the liquid. So let's see what happens. Oh yeah, see that? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Look at that. Look at that. Oh yeah. I think we're going to get a good time lapse. Look at the silver building up on there already. Yeah, look at that. I think we're going to get a pretty good time lapse. There's a lot of silver in this liquid, and it's all going to come out on this copper real quick. I shined it up nice with some sandpaper. Got the oxidation off of it. So, yeah. Okay. We'll just let this run. I'll probably let this go all day. It's morning. I'll probably let it go until evening or even into tomorrow, just to make sure we get all of the silver out of this solution. All right, let's weigh up how much silver we got from this first harvest of the silver cell now that it's good and dry. Absolutely perfectly dry and very shiny. Nice. See what we got here. Are we on the gram scale? Yes, we're on the gram scale and we're zeroed out. So let's see what we've got here. If I can get it all in without spilling any of it. Crystals like to stick together. A lot of nice knife-like crystals in here. Might have less chance of spilling it doing it this way. What are we up to here? 200 and I can't quite read it. 266. I hope it's showing up on the video. 266 grams. I'll zoom in. So far, 266 grams. Keep going here. Good, I may have to a little bit of fine powder in there to wipe out. So where are we? 621 grams. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but 621 grams. All right, so that's great. I used 331 grams to make the electrolyte last time. So I've got almost double in my first harvest of pure crystal here from the dirty silver I used to make the electrolyte. This is looking pretty good. I'm liking this silver cell operation. I should have done it years ago, but I didn't have as much silver then as I do now from all this stuff I'm doing for Johnny. Now, I'm not foolish enough to believe that one trip through the silver cell has gotten all the gunge out of these crystals. They look really nice, but I'll bet there's still some stuff hiding in them that needs to be removed. So these crystals are eventually going to get melted down to make new anode bars and go through the cell a second time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some really pure electrolyte too, using the lye and sugar method to purify the silver, enough for the electrolyte anyway, and then we'll run all this silver through the cell again, plus some other silver I've got, and we're just bootstrapping ourselves up from dirty silver to cleaner silver every step of the way. All right, so let me set this aside. All right, I want to make up a new batch of electrolyte for the silver cell. All right, I am going to use this silver here, and this is a mixture of different types of silver here. It's about 350 grams worth, just a little under. I had some cement silver laying around I want to process. I had this little bar here, this ugly little bar I want to process, and I put some of the crystal from this last run of the cell in there. So it's around 350 grams of silver. I'm going to dissolve all this in nitric acid, and I want really clean electrolyte for the second run of the cell. Because the first run of the cell, even though we produced some pretty good looking crystal, I'm sure it's contaminated with some stuff because the first run of the cell was made with dirty silver from cement silver. I'll give you a look at what the first run of electrolyte looked like. I want the second run of the cell to have really pure electrolyte so that we can continue bootstrapping ourselves up from that dirty silver to cleaner silver as we go. So I'm going to dissolve this in nitric acid, but I'm not going to use it directly for electrolyte. What I'm going to do is reprecipitate it with hydrochloric acid as silver chloride, and then we'll use the lye and sugar method to recover the silver from it. And then we'll dissolve that silver in nitric acid. And then we should have very, very, very pure electrolyte. So let me get this in the fume hood and get it started dissolving in some nitric acid. All right, it's going to be a long process. We got to dissolve this stuff, precipitate this silver chloride, convert it back to silver with the lye and sugar method, and then redissolve it again. This is going to take a little while. I'll try to condense it for you as much as I can so this video is not 3 hours long. All right, first thing we're going to do is cover this. Distilled water, I might put a little bit more in. We got a lot of silver to dissolve there. So I'm going to put the nitric acid in doses, just so we don't have too crazy of a reaction and a boil over. It's probably going to take about 350 milliliters of nitric acid to dissolve all that silver. I'm going to put in, it's actually more than I was planning, but I've already dumped it out. So I'm going to put in about 125 milliliters. So it's probably going to take about 3 doses that size to get that silver all in solution. This is all stone cold, absolutely stone cold. It's been chilly lately too. But look at the reaction we're getting already. And I do believe I see orange fumes forming already. Yep. I'll put a little heat to it in a little bit. Like I said, I don't want it to boil over though. So I don't want to put too much heat to it too quick, or I could have a runaway reaction. So I'm just going to let this sit for a bit. Um, the reaction with the nitric acid will probably develop some heat. I'll probably put some low heat to it just to keep things going. Okay? So, see if we can get that stuff in solution. Alright, this stuff's been going for a little over 24 hours now. Every time I shake the silver off of them, it reforms after a while. So I'm just going to leave this sitting here for days if necessary. We get all the silver out of that solution. There's no rush. I don't care how long it takes. Just want to make sure we get all the silver out of there. All right, I've been working on an improvement over my duct tape and cardboard lid for the cell. For the long term, I need something better. So I cut a disc out of plywood here. Slightly larger hole here that the neck of the anode bottle can go through, and then it slides back here, but it cannot go through that narrower slot. And then I just use the clip to hold it in place, like so, in theory. Hard to do without not blocking the camera. Okay, there we go. So that anode bottle is not going anywhere. This will sit down in the 5-liter beaker. This will cover the top of the 5-liter beaker to keep debris out of it. I can put a watch glass over it to keep debris from going down that hole and in the anode bottle. And I've still got a hole here now where I can use a funnel to add extra electrolyte as necessary, or get a long glass stir rod in there to knock down crystals that are getting close to the filter. Sometimes they do grow up close to the filter. You don't want it to grow to the filters. All right, I think I will change the filter out too. While I've got the whole thing apart and I'm just standing here waiting with a little time on my hands, I think I will change out the filter. Might as well restart it with a new filter, fresh everything. So I've cut a new piece of Dacron cloth for the filter out of one of the vacuum bag filters. There's going to be links to everything I'm using here down in the video description, so you can check that out. These Dacron filters are dirt cheap, and you can get dozens of filters out of each one. So let me cut this old filter off. Get rid of it. Should probably throw that in with the anode slime storage. It might have some stuff in it. All right. So, also, I've got this lid over here I made out of wood. Showed you that earlier. My Silver Cell update video came out not too long ago, and there were a lot of comments on that. Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. I really do. And a couple people said, well, for a truly transparent Silver Cell, you should make a plexiglass lid rather than a wood one. Well, I had already thought about that, actually. And I do plan to make a plexiglass lid as soon as I find a suitable piece of plexiglass. Of course, my glassworking skills are pretty epic too, if I do say so myself, so it's just possible I might make a glass one. I can cut holes and slots in glass. I'm pretty good at that. So I could make a glass one too. That would prevent debris from getting in, and I wouldn't have to worry about the chemicals attacking the plexiglass, which I guess could happen. So that's down the road, though. I just want to get this thing up and running again at some point. I mean, I was working with cardboard or a tea towel over the top. This is going to be a big improvement to start with. And then remember, I've said it before, you need chemically resistant, talking chemical resistance, you need chemically resistant cable ties for this. The regular ones just aren't going to cut it. The acidic solution in there is going to attack them pretty quickly and cause problems. So there we go. That looks pretty good. A couple little wrinkles, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. All right. All right. So there we are. I can put this back on it. And as soon as I get the new load of electrolyte made, we can restart the cell and get back down to business here. I think there's going to be some changes in the way I operate the cell moving forward. At least I'll experiment with some changes. I've been doing some more research. You know, as usual, I dived into this project with both feet without doing all my due diligence. So I was running way too high a voltage and way too much current through the cell. And I think that caused some problems. We may see some problems crop up here in the future, so don't tune out yet. Little foreshadowing there. But yeah, so I think in the future going to run the cell a little different. I may even change out power supplies. We'll see. All right, I've got all that silver in solution. In fact, there's a little bit more than the 350 grams I showed you. I found some other silver scrap laying around, and I just threw it in there to get it dissolved too. So there's probably closer to 375 or 400 grams of silver in there. Some of it was pretty dirty. A lot of debris on the bottom. Some stuff floating too. So I'm going to have to filter this. But what concerns me more is the color. Yeah, it's a yellow-green. So that tells me that we've got a little bit of copper in here. And we've got some palladium too, probably. But, you know, a lot of this silver came from relay contacts, which I think are alloyed with palladium. So I'm not surprised to see the palladium there. So I think we're going to try and recover the palladium from this stuff before we go to the recover the silver out of it and turn it back into silver with the lye and sugar method. I think first we'll try and get the palladium out of it. I need to get rid of the debris down there first, so we'll do that first. Okay, it is time to filter this very yellow liquid and get the debris out of it. And then we will tackle getting the yellow out of it. Pump plugged in here. This is probably going to go pretty quickly. There's not enough debris in here, I don't think, to clog my filter. So we'll have this filtered really quickly. So I'm going to finish filtering this and rinse the silver out of the filter. We'll put this back in here. Then we'll work on getting what is almost certainly palladium out of it. That is the wrong color for silver cell electrolyte. Okay? Okay, filtration is done. I have washed the silver out of the filter. Okay. Let's get this stuff back in this beaker. Clean the beaker out some. So we're going to be using it again in a minute, but still, I want to get as much of this yellow stuff out of it as I can. Actually, maybe longer than a minute. Get this stuff out. All right. So, I think I've said it a couple of times, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, that most of Johnny's silver came from relay contacts, which seem to have been alloyed with palladium. Based on this batch of electrolyte and the previous batch of electrolyte, which was a light yellow-green to start with, I would say we've had a lot of palladium issues here. So I need to get the palladium out. How am I going to do that? Because it tends to follow silver through the process. I could try purifying this with lye and sugar, but I think that the palladium is going to drop out with the silver if I add silver chloride to it, and I don't know if it's going to follow silver through the lye and sugar process. I'm not sure. So we're just going to try and get rid of the palladium at this point right here. So I've got some DMG water here. Basically, this is water that I've dissolved as much DMG in as will dissolve, and there's still a little bit of undissolved DMG in there. DMG is dimethylglycine, and it will form a complex with palladium and nickel and cobalt and other metals, an insoluble complex. So if I put some of this in here, except the undissolved palladium's clogging up the nozzle, I might have to pour some in. Yeah, I might have to pour some in. I'm not going to put too much in now. It's probably enough for the moment. Let me give it a good stir. What we're probably going to see, and what I think we're already seeing, is that this liquid is going to get a lot yellower. See, we've got a precipitate forming. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, we've got an insoluble palladium complex precipitate forming. Focus you. Okay. So this is going to be a fairly slow process based on my experience for this stuff to settle out. But what I want to do is I want to let it settle and then see if I need to put more DMG in. So I don't want to have a big excess of DMG in here. If this stuff settles out and the liquid is clear or just very slightly blue, I would say we've got rid of the palladium. If it's still kind of yellowish or greenish, I would say there's still palladium in there. So I'm going to let this stuff sit and settle and then decide whether I need to add more DMG water to it or not. So it's going to take a while. You don't have to watch the whole thing. All right, I went off for a couple of hours, had some errands to run, come back, and there's a layer of palladium salt that settled to the bottom. I think this is still extra yellow because there's some salt that hasn't settled out yet, but there is a clear layer near the top here, and I can see that the clear liquid is still quite yellow. So we're going to put in some more of this stuff and stir it up and let it settle again. And I'm just going to keep this up until we don't have any more clear yellow liquid in there. Don't want to put in too much at a time, so I don't want to have a lot of extra DMG in there because I don't know what that will cause, if anything. So just going to let it settle again. I got other stuff to work on, so no rush. Well, it's been a couple hours, and would you look at that? Look at that. All that yellow stuff's down at the bottom now. That's that yellow palladium complex with DMG. And I can filter that out, and we should have a nice clean solution after I do that. Hey, you'll wonder where the yellow went when you brush with Pepsodent. Yeah, most of you are probably way too young to remember that advertising jingle. Anyway, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to filter this stuff and catch that palladium salt on the filter in there, and we'll store that away in a container for Johnny, since most of this silver came from his relay contacts, and I'm sure the silver was probably alloyed with a little bit of palladium to make it harder, whatnot. So, I mean, it looks like a decent amount down there, but really, there's not much at all. That will just be like a yellow stain on the filter after I filter it. And we'd have to do this a lot of times to build up enough to try recovering the palladium. But at least we can get it out of our silver for now. See, this is all part of bootstrapping ourselves up from some really dirty silver to some really clean 3/9 fine silver. Oh, and has anybody else ever had this experience working with DMG? There's a very strong buttery smell when I add it to silver nitrate solution. Smells like movie theater popcorn. I did a little research on that, and people say DMG has no smell. Or maybe a little bit fishy if it does, but that smells like butter to me. Look at that. Look how clean that's coming through. Maybe a very slight trace of blue, but I might even be imagining it. But certainly, that is just massively cleaner electrolyte than what we started with. Plus, this is going to be diluted to almost 4 liters. I might only go 3.5 liters. So any color left in there is going to be nil by the time it's diluted. Get the rest of this in the filter. Yeah. Zoom out a little bit. I will rinse this beaker out. And then I'll give you a look at the yellow stuff in the filter here and show you there's really not that much. That palladium complex is really fluffy, and it just becomes nothing on the filter. And there you go. That's how you make clean silver electrolyte from dirty silver. And look at that. That is just, I don't even believe there's a trace of blue in it anymore. I think that's maybe just reflecting the sky over there. All right. I'll give you a look in the funnel. Yep. All right, there's the palladium salt. Sorry, Johnny, you're not getting rich on it. At least not yet. But it's not in the silver anymore either. So the silver is going to be more valuable by getting all these pollutants out of it. Now we got some nice, clean electrolyte. Yeah, that blue color, that's just the sky. It's not really blue. Nice. All right, so that electrolyte is really amazingly clear. There is no color to it at all. There is no blue of copper. There's no yellow of palladium anymore. And there's no nothing. So I'm having second thoughts about going to the full lye and sugar method on this stuff. I think it's probably clean enough that I can use it as is. So I think I'm going to give it a try. I think we're just going to dilute this down and use it as is and see how it works in the cell. All right, I'm going to set this aside until I'm ready to make up the electrolyte and restart the cell. Got more to do before we get there. All right, it's a couple days later. This stuff's finally done. So what I'm going to do is I am going to filter off this liquid, capture all the silver in the bottom of the beaker here, and there's a fair amount of it down there. Rinse all of the blue color out of it with repeated hot water rinses. And I'll set this silver aside, and at some point I will melt it down and make new anode bars to run through the silver cell. So we'll get this purified just as good as we can. All right, here's all the cement silver from the bottom of that big 5-liter beaker. I filtered it off camera, washed it really good, and put it on a hot plate to dry. Looks like I got the hot plate a little too hot because it looks like I singed the filter paper. But that's not a problem. Anyway, this silver will get melted down and made into anode bars to be purified at some point in the future. All right, I think the only next step we need to do before I can set the silver cell up again is unbox my new power supply. I decided to upgrade my power supply. I've got a couple of them that I've used so far. Nice beefy connectors, good. Not really happy with either of them. So I went and bought the sort of power supply that Anthony Thomas uses. And like I said, there'll be links to all this stuff down in the video description if you want to build your own silver cell. What does this say? Please peel off this before use. There we go. Okay, there we are. All right. So the reason I bought this is because both my power supplies are pretty old, and the best one is current limited to about 2.5 amps. All right. Now, my experience running the cell the first time was I'm not sure I need more amps, but it'd be nice to have them. But what I'm really going to try this time is running constant voltage instead of constant current. And then we'll just let the current do whatever the current does at a given voltage. I think I said earlier, I kind of jumped into the deep end of this without knowing how to swim, and I've just been trying to figure it out here. So I have a little practical experience under my belt now, but I've been doing some research. And I think my other power supplies were running at way too high a voltage to get any current through the cell. So we're going to try running at lower voltage, lower constant voltage, and then just let the current do whatever the current does. So I think this is going to be a better power supply for that. Let me plug it in to make sure it works. Otherwise, I might have to return it and deal with my own power supplies until a new one comes back. Let's see here. Plug it in. No smoke yet. Power. Okay. There. Let's see here. Output. Okay. All right. Okay, so we got voltage and current regulation. Oh, that's way too much voltage. Bring that back down. I'm probably going to want to operate somewhere between 3 and 5 volts, I think. I'll experiment with that anyway. Let's put it down to about 4. Current. Just getting it ready to go, you know? Wow, that was really cranked up there. I mean, we were peaked out at 2.5 amps on my other power supply, so I might as well crank it down to that and see if we actually get 2.5 amps through it at 4 volts. If we do, maybe I can increase the current limit a little bit and see how that works. But I would say we are ready to go. I guess I will dilute down some electrolyte and start putting the cell back together. And we'll get it up and running again and see what happens with this new power supply. All right, let's get this show on the road. I'm going to dilute down this now very clean electrolyte. I think I'm only going to go to about 3.5 liters though. Maybe run a little bit more concentrated than last time. Plus, you know, not everything that went in here was silver, it turns out. There was some palladium. So I think we'll run at about 3.5 liters strength. And since this stuff's pretty concentrated, I'd better rinse this one more time, make sure I get all the silver out of it. Hang it on the drying rack to drain. Right, let's get some distilled water in here. And despite my issues with my markings on beakers. I'm going to use the markings on this beaker. Bring it up to about 3.5 liters. There. That looks pretty good. Alright, so set that aside. Here's the cell. Everything's been very thoroughly cleaned. Got the cathode in it, so I guess we're ready to put some electrolyte in it. Again, I'm going to use the gauge on the side here. Of course, this is just a matter of knowing where the anode bottle hangs. I'm going to put in a little more than I started with last time. Put in about 2.5 liters. I'm going to put in maybe 2 3/4. I can always go up to a full 3 liters if I want to. Alright. Let me get the anode bottle in there and get it started filling with electrolyte. Go. It's going to float until enough liquid backflows through the Dacron filter there for it to sink. And once that happens, we can start the thing up. Yeah, there's liquid going in. It just takes a little while. Okay, I guess we're ready to go. So I need to get the anode bar in here. This is the last of the anode bars I poured originally. And probably the best one, too. Get it hooked up. The cathode hooked up here. Okay. Sure this wire can actually move as the anode bar gets eaten up. It's going to need to drop in there some. Okay. Let me turn the power on. I had already set it to 4 volts, current limit of 2.5 amps. Turn the output on. And well, we got 4 volts, but we've got very little current. Only 128 milliamps at 4 volts. So at 5 volts, we're up to 161 milliamps. Well, that's interesting. On the previous cell, the voltage was all over the place when the current was at that 1.5 amps. See what happens if I mean, it doesn't really matter. At 14, 15 volts, we're up to 0.5 amp. So I'm not sure why the cell is less conductive, because in the other cell, we could get 1.5 amps at 4 volts some of the time, but other times the voltage would go up to 30 volts and be limited at 1.5 amps. So I'm not sure what's going on. But even at 0.5 amp, I'm sure we're going to start seeing crystals growing on the cathode pretty darn quick. Let's see what time it is here. It is 4:06 p.m., late in the afternoon here. So I think I may actually already see a light dusting of crystals down there already. Okay, let's wait a few minutes and see what happens. All right, it is 4:08. Only 2 minutes in, And yeah, I can't focus on them, but there's a dusting of very shiny silver crystals on the cathode already, even at only a little over half an amp. So, okay. The crystals are growing. There they are, aren't they? In and out of focus there. I didn't want to focus on them. But the crystals are growing. So I don't know why. I don't know. This cell flummoxes me, but it does work. I'm going to leave it at 15 volts for now and just keep an eye on the current. It should still be limited. In fact, let me turn the limit back down. I'm going to turn it down to 1.5 amps, which is what I was running before. And we'll see if the amount of current going through the cell goes up over time. As it certainly did before. Alright. Oh yeah. Those crystals are getting more obvious down there. Nice. Very nice. Well, it's been about 10 more minutes. We're off to a bit of a slow start. A little over half an amp. Current's come up a bit. Starting to see some discoloration in the anode bottle. That is some dirty silver that I made those anode bars out of. But we are getting crystal growth. So the cell is up and running again. Alright. I'm just going to keep an eye on it for a while. See what happens with the current. The current starts going up, I'll turn the voltage down. I really don't want to run at this high a voltage for my research. That's going to facilitate other stuff besides silver plating out on the cathode. So, don't really want that. So if I can get the current to come up a bit, I will turn the voltage down. Still, we're going to wind up with much cleaner silver in here than what we're starting with up here. That's guaranteed. Okay, gonna let it go for now. Alright, it's been about 2.5 hours. I managed to jam enough charge into the GoPro to get it started out here taking a time lapse of the crystals, which are no longer difficult to see. They're growing pretty well. Yep, the crystals are getting bigger, slowly, but they're getting bigger. I'm going to continue trying to run at only half an amp here and see what happens. And I think as the cell warms up, the resistance of the cell is going to go down and we'll get more current through it. And I might even be able to reduce the voltage. I would like to run it at as low a voltage as possible to prevent pulling other metals over to the cathode. So I'm going to try and keep the current at half an amp and keep the voltage down. But here we are, up and running again on our second run of the cell with some nice crystal clear electrolyte. And I'm expecting we'll get even purer crystals out of it this time around, although the first batch looked pretty darn good. Stay tuned for more time-lapse videos to come out of the cell once the crystals start growing in earnest. And subscribe to see future videos on the silver cell and all kinds of other stuff I'm doing. And if you found this video at all interesting, educational, informative, inspirational, whatever, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this one. Bye.